welcome to SHOWstudio. It's our first menswear roundup panel. We're obviously going to start with London because London's our native city, but also it is the kind of the city that kicks off all the menswear shows. And I think increasingly the one that has perhaps the biggest spotlight on it, which is kind of sometimes at its disservice because I think it puts a huge amount of pressure on young designers. But I think this season, everyone really kind of like rose to the challenge, and there were a lot of really amazing shows, particularly actually from some of the youngest designers, which is obviously really, really nice to see. Before we kind of dive in and talk about some of the themes that came out of this season and sort of the highlights and maybe lowlights, I'll just let my great set of panellists introduce themselves, starting with you, Charlie.
I'm Charlie Porter. I'm a men's fashion critic at the Financial Times.
I'm Stavros Karelis, and I'm the founder and buying director of Machine A.
And I'm Patrick Grant, and I'm the designer at eTorts.
Very nice. Would anyone like a crisp?
You've got 59 minutes to finish the bowl.
No, I took the bowl away. I just have a plate now. Okay, so I'm going to kick off by kind of like throwing out to the table because, you know, I think once you start naming all the people, when I was putting my list together of kind of shows I wanted to talk about, there's so many kind of people that I was like, oh, that was a great show, or that was really interesting because of this. So I think what would be good is just to kind of dive in with, was there anyone that really, really stood out for you guys who you were particularly, I know you've got someone in mind,
Yeah.
Charlie.
Oh, Jules, I mean, the thing is,
Yeah.
well, the thing, I'm not going to say anything. No, I actually agree with what you said at the beginning, because the thing was that last season was the first time that the LCM, as it's known, got some criticism, and Matthew Schneier, who's a great journalist in the New York Times, he wrote a piece saying that there kind of need to be a bit of wheat from chaff, and there needed to be a real sense now that it's been going on for so long that there was like actually a real always constant like improvement and constant evolution. And I thought that this season really answered to that, whether consciously or subconsciously, and it was particularly exciting with the super young ones and the two new debut designers at the Men's Show, which was Grace World Bonner and Charles Jeffrey.
Yeah.
And these came on the first day of the show, so it was the Friday afternoon, and Grace opened the show, and it was one of those real complete moments of like it was an honour to be there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can see in that image there. So there's people on the catwalk. There's the models came down, but at the top of the catwalk, down the, I guess that'd be the right. There's a guy sitting down who is playing a kora.
Kora, that's it. Yeah.
And the models, when they came out, they bowed to him as a gesture of respect before they then came down the catwalk, and it was the most simple, kind of humble catwalk gesture, and it was so powerful, and it really spoke to Grace's use of heritage, but also individual character, and also about looking to the future as well, because they were bowing to the Cora to give their respect to the past, but then going forward to the future.
I think what's really interesting about Grace is I feel like her work is so rich, you know, there's so much that you can not even like read into it, but actually just learn from it. Like her research is fascinating, and I think really important. I think she deals with things that, you know, we haven't seen championed enough in fashion, or, you know, histories and heritages that just perhaps haven't found a voice on the runways. But you can have all of that if you choose, but then also you can just look at it and it's just amazing clothes. You know, the pieces can just be, you know, you can read into it as much as you want. You can take from it absolutely nothing and just enjoy it for the pieces, which I think is really exciting. We're getting into Rory now. Was everyone else impressed?
I think they look like clothes. I've not worn them. I mean, you're wearing one. I think to me that they look like clothes that I would find beautiful to wear. You know, these are clothes that I think are cut for people to wear. I mean, it's interesting because there are similarities with some other designers visually, but I think the difference between these and some of those that I don't like so much is that I imagine myself wearing those and feeling great wearing them, and feeling sort of chic or cool or whatever. And actually, I think a lot of the London designers forget that people need to feel good when they wear the clothes. It's okay to create an image that is arresting, but at the end of the day, people still have to put them on and wear them to then buy them. And these look like clothes. I mean, it's interesting. They're, you know, it's sort of reminds me of some of the stuff that Tom Ford was sort of trying to do but wasn't brave enough to really go for. Like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago with his menswear. Which seems an odd comparison because they're poles apart, but there is that it looks like beautiful drapey fabric that's, you know, that looks luxurious and looks great and looks sort of sexy and and masculine, and I really like it. I don't know so much about her. I've never met her, but I think they are visually arresting. I think it seems like she thinks it through, and I think it looks to me like she spent a lot of time cutting those clothes, not just finding something that looks visually interesting and sticking it on, but working it. And those trousers look amazing, and that's not easy to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, when I met Grace in Paris, actually, the best thing about it is that the biggest challenge that emerging designers and young designers have right now is basically to do clothes, but also to be affordable. Like to be to work the prices well, and to have good production. And I think her production was great. It was absolutely amazing. And from previous seasons, her pricing has developed a lot. So she has managed to find really good factories. All the clothes look amazingly well also on a hanger and on a rail, and she basically had really, really good pricing too, which I think from a retail point of view, and it would be extremely helpful for buyers to buy this collection.
Because some of the work is very, very expensive.
Yes, it is, of course, especially the embellishments, and especially some of the accessories.
They made an active decision because we're also talking about someone who's only in her third season, and this is her first ever catwalk show. So to be talking about her in that level is already extraordinary. Some people on their first show are nothing, but they have, because this has also been Grace's kind of look since she began. It's not like she's evolved into this. It's very much a consistent view, and she's had a lot of conflicting opinion from buyers in the last few seasons, and Grace made a decision, the people she works with, to really actually just push it and make the best clothes they could. Yeah. And to really push the embroidery and push the embellishment, because they realised that they're not going to be a mass brand or a brand that wheels out.
No.
Yeah, or like Jonathan Anderson has ranges of sweatshirts and stuff that sells alongside the more catwalk stuff. But they know that they are going to work as a specialised, specific brand that does special pieces and find a customer for them. And it's a very brave and bold decision to make.
I think it is the only way that you can actually make a success of it, though. And I think a lot of the time, I know when we were first starting out, that there was always pressure from different stores who saw you in their mind going in a certain direction, trying to push you. Yeah. Whether it was store A saying, I think we need more cashmere, or store B going, we need more brown, or whatever it happens to be. They always think that they know where you ought to be. And the important thing is, especially if you're trying to make your mark, is to absolutely ignore all of that. Yeah. Because otherwise you're just going to end up being a kind of diluted version of yourself. And we sort of made that mistake for a while. But, I think it's great that, you already get a sense of, you do get a sort of strong sense of what this brand is going to deliver, and that's the way you will fall in love with it as an individual person. You have to, you have to really love it to want to go and buy it, because there's a lot of other stuff out there. And I think by delivering consistently a really clear message.
She's also explaining why she wants to be a young designer. I think one thing I do want to talk about is you just wrote that brilliant piece on your blog about kind of the fashion system. We tweeted a link if people want to read it, and I was thinking a lot about people entering into fashion now and why they do it. And I think what's interesting with Grace is she wants to be kind of a small brand or an emerging brand, and she's happy with that. And I think it's really great. And I kind of feel like the same about Marcus Almeida on the women's side, is these brands who have these points of view and this idea of what they want to be and what they want to champion, the world that they want to engage with, but also how big they want to be and what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do.
And the assumption that if you're a brand, you're meant to grow by this much.
And you're meant to, and that's what your aspiration was. Yeah, she kind of doesn't engage with that. It's actually, I think that's really important, because I think the more that we can diversify what it means to be a successful brand, the more avenues that are open to other people coming into the industry. I think it's super important.
For me, one of the most successful brands in the country is Paul Harnden Shoemakers, who has that little, just sells in Dover Street Market, and he makes it in his little house in Brighton, and it's the most extraordinary mania in front of his rails, but he has no interest in this whole thing. I think the interesting thing with Grace as well, though, is that if you can scroll to the very, very top, the first two looks there, a double-breasted suit and then a zip-up, pretty much define the whole season. Yeah. And this was the third show we saw in London from a brand new designer on the Man Catwalk, and by the end of Paris, the number of times I've written double-breasted suit or zip-up thingy, and there in the first two looks is the menswear season for autumn.
Talking about it, kind of summing up the menswear season, what do you think about the fact, and going back to what we're saying about retail, what do we think about the fact that she's been bought for the women's wear side, because Matches Fashion have bought her exclusively for women, and I was speaking to some of the team at opening ceremony. I think in the US they sell her on the women's side.
They have showed the whole products. I think that if you visit the e-commerce of opening ceremony, they have showed the whole collection on women.
On women. What do we think about that? Because it's weird.
So they're the men's clothes, but bought.
They're bought for women.
Yeah,
so they're bought. I wonder if they're even going to be. I can't imagine. I haven't spoken enough to the e-commerce team. I've spoken to the buyers. I don't know if they're going to promote it as this is a menswear collection that we've bought.
No,
or
I think it's just seen as women's. I mean, there is a piece on her in the new American Vogue as women's wear.
Yeah.
And I scanned it through, and I think Grace said that it just is like something that she does on the side. I think, and I think she had to deal with it as well, because I think she presented it first as menswear. Yeah. And then the first buying reaction was, no, this is women's wear. So she had to, I think, make a decision of like, do I pretend like no, and not have that interest, or does she let people wear the clothes in the way they want? And the thing is that women do look great in them, so I'm not sure. I think the thing is that it shouldn't be an issue for her. I think it's great that her clothes are out there. It'd be great if menswear stores stocked them and bought them as menswear, because they are her references are men. Like this one was about James Baldwin, and as well as Sun Ra, and as well as, but like men are the references, and it'd be great if men could actually wear the clothes.
That's what's the weird thing, isn't it, at the moment with all this climate of kind of like gender neutral shopping and what have you. It's like, it's great in principle and everyone talks about it, and I think it is, it's brilliant that we're seeing things done in a less kind of rigid way. But then I think when push comes to shove, it's actually very hard for retailers to kind of catch up with that, particularly ones that don't have a physical space where you can kind of do a mixed rail. Is if you go on any e-commerce store, it is split between men's and women's. That's how the budgets are divided. That's how the buyers are divided, and it means that it's very hard to then present something in a way where it's like, the first thing someone said it on the panel this morning, the first thing that you choose when you go on any e-retail store pretty much is men or women. You click on it.
Yeah. But retail's a really slow-moving ship, isn't it? I mean, like it takes a long time for things to change in retail.
I think. Ultimately, the important thing is that she finds people who really like what she does and who want to buy it and wear it. And I don't, I think it is. I think it would trouble. It probably would trouble me. I mean, we went through it for a little while because we did get women who wanted our men's clothes, and for a while we did sort of small sizes that were bought as women's wear, and we actually, in the end, ended up putting them together as looks so that you could see how it might look on a woman. But ultimately, we got to the point where we felt like we wanted to be a men's brand, and it was men that were. We had the greatest resonance with a male audience, and so we just stopped. We stopped doing that because it's very, very hard to be all things to all men or women, and I felt that we needed to be really clear about what we were trying to do and who we were trying to do it for, to give ourselves the best chance of cutting through the noise. Just making a success in menswear is very, very difficult. And I think it's always tempting as a menswear designer. You see the speed at which women's wear brands accelerate from zero. The sort of growth rate of women's wear brands is far, far faster than it is in men's. Men's is a much slower. I think men are more loyal to brands that they've known and bought for a long time, and I think it takes most men longer to just get into the idea of buying a new brand, whereas I think women are very keen to try things that are new. And I think because of that, you've got women's brands. If you could see all the numbers of you just look at the number of stockists on men's brands versus women's brands, and you've got brands going from 0 to 100 in
But the danger of what you're talking about there is that I think in women's wear there's more of the case of brands feeling they have to grow really quick and then collapse and fall away. Whereas I think in menswear there's more the opportunity to grow at the pace that then allows
that is
things
real
to happen
and
in the proper.
sustainable.
Exactly, because women's has got such a up, right?
Unless you're a brand that you want, if you're a menswear, you want to develop into women's wear in one point, or vice versa. I mean, for example, if you think about Grace, and lots of times I'm thinking about J.W. Anderson, at the same time, and I'm thinking about that there are loads of styles that we see on the menswear, and then they carry on to women's wear. And there are many people that are buying, actually lots of women are buying into the menswear of JW and vice versa. So I think that Grace could grow in that way, as a brand. Of course it is a menswear brand and her inspiration is coming from a menswear point of view, but slowly and probably in the future, she can probably introduce some of women's wear, inside the brand.
I think the great thing about Grace and her operation is that she's not having to think about this sort of stuff in any way at all. She's thinking about how to make the best show and the best clothes, and doing the deepest research to make the most resonant message. Like really, her thinking, I don't think is like, what's my brand? I mean, obviously she knows her brand, but it all comes from the ability to really, really look into histories and characters. And the extraordinary thing about this show was that until a few weeks before, we weren't even sure if Grace wanted to do a catwalk show, because previously Grace had done 2 kind of tableau presentations and an extraordinary fashion in motion at the V&A, where she really told a story with static models. And I actually didn't know whether it would work as a show. And that was the power of this, was that it was one of the best shows of the season. It's someone doing their first ever show.
I agree with you. That's a big challenge between presentations and catwalk shows, because some designers are so good and so strong in presentations. I mean, when I think about presentations, I always think about Grace. The last 2 seasons have been excellent, and also Kurt Weiler, for example. They always do like such strong presentations. So it's always strange to think how it's going to be translated when they're going to have a catwalk show, and I think Grace was a great example that you can move forward.
I just want to pick up, I sound like I'm like obsessing on your piece, but I am kind of obsessed with your piece. But I think you couldn't really do this season, and obviously it's apt as well because the New York women's wear shows are kind of going on while we're sitting here. It was a weird time, I felt, to be going to catwalk shows and sitting and looking at fashion. I found it very weird this season in some ways, like, because there were all these themes buzzing around, as you kind of said, about this fictitious system and what that means, and it being broken, and what the future is. And I think, that, as you pointed out, there's been a huge amount of kind of agitation about it, and it's been so weird reading the reportage all around New York, because it feels like all the critics, they're writing about the system and the criticism and social media, and it's not so much about the clothes. And what do we think is going to happen, and what do we think is the best way of designers being able to present in a way that's suitable? And obviously, we've had huge news about, how people are restructuring, people like Burberry, Tom Ford, Paul Smith, all these different changes.
Bedmont. I mean, should we jump to Burberry now?
Yeah, let's go to Burberry.
Because the thing is, this is probably the last ever Burberry men's show. And actually, you would get told off by Burberry by calling it Burberry Prawsome there, because they're Burberry just on its own. Like, they were really serious, like, don't call it Burberry Prawsome, it's just Burberry. And so I didn't mean telling you off. I didn't like it was your fault.
Let yourself down.
But it is interesting that this is, so Burberry are in this September coming are going to show men's and women's at the same time in London, and at that moment or the day after it goes on sale to the public. So this is the last ever Burberry menswear show. There is a Burberry women's wear show in this week, next week, I think.
Until it all goes full circle again and they start.
And they start another thing. But
But
I think the interesting thing with Burberry, I think the thing is that it's not as scary as people think it's going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it might. I don't know if maybe I'm being. But I think. The thing that I think is that Burberry. The reality is that this thing that was called Burberry Prawsome, which was the top tier show, it sold actually very few. It didn't sell that much for them. Their biggest business was Burberry London, Burberry Brit, the trench coats, all this stuff. So Burberry is a commercial brand that actually the catwalk show was the icing on the top in the most transparent sense. And so actually it makes sense for them to do a show which is buy now, seen, wear now.
Yeah.
And also this show was a move towards bringing the more commercial piece onto the catwalk. Whereas someone like Grace, I think there probably will still be some system where they still show with the lead. I don't think it necessarily has to be.
I hope it will.
Yeah.
I hope it will.
Well, I mean, the more you think about exactly what they've done, the more you think, well, this isn't anything at all. You've got to. What they've announced is that they're going to do a show and you're going to buy it on the spot. But what does that mean? That means that 6 months before, they're going to have collections ready that they can sell.
Yeah.
They have to sell them either internally to their own buyers and to their own web stores and sell them, and they will still do presumably wholesale. So they'll have a collection 6 months in advance that people will come and look at in a showroom and buy. And the press are going to want to have a look at that. And they're going to want, when 6 months happen, 6 months down the line, when the show comes out, they're going to want to have editorial press. So they're going to have to lend the pieces to journalists, and they're going to have to go out for editorial shoots. So basically, and so what's going to happen is they're going to do this showroom and do all the stuff, and it's going to be kept quiet for 6 months, and then it's all going to be revealed at the time that it gets to store. But that's exactly how it was 30 flipping years ago. It's exactly how it was. When people used to have to go and they weren't allowed to publish the pictures, and they couldn't take, back to the days where you weren't even, like, if you got caught sketching in a show, you'd get ejected. It's just exactly the same thing. It's just moved a season. But then it'll probably all just start all over again, and stuff will creep out because it's inevitable that people will want to creep. Because Tom Ford tried to do the same thing with his. With his collections, you weren't allowed to take pictures, and you weren't, attempting to do the same thing, which was recreate the idea that when clothes go on sale, they are fresh and new, and you really want to get them. And that's how it was when I was growing up and loving fashion. You saw clothes in the magazines, and they were in the stores, and you hadn't seen them for 6 months, and they hadn't been copied by Zara and H&M and Primark and everyone. So you weren't bored of seeing them because you'd seen a rip off them on the tube. And you hadn't, and this great digital revolution that basically has ruined our love of fashion because it's just spammed it everywhere before you can, you're bored of it by the time you can buy it. All that was so great, and actually now it's the big, big problem. But actually we're just turning the clock back 30 years.
And it's interesting because this season, a number of times buyers said they had to sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, when they went and saw collections. Yeah, certain brands, or there were certain brands where things were changing, and so press weren't allowed to see the collections, and so you had to sign an NDA. Or I heard someone who was asked to sign an NDA because he took a picture, and that he instead deleted it and was let them see him delete it. And so I think NDAs are going to come into effect in some way.
I think it's good though, in a way that the industry is changing. I think it's interesting what you mentioned with Tom Ford. There was that weird period of trying to control what was released, and that felt really antiquated because it felt like people refusing to acknowledge a system and trying to control the behaviour of others. And I feel at least it is good that brands are taking a bit of a kind of, actually, we can't stop this, like the tide is changing, we can't be like, stop the tide, we have to move.
Go
on. I have a slightly different opinion, on that matter. I think that I don't think that all the brands are the same, and I don't think, that whenever we speak about, the whole fashion industry, I don't think that, generalization is a good thing, because I think that the young brands and the emerging brands are working with completely different ways from like big brands. So I think that kind of like change that we're talking about, I don't think that is a change that so many brands right now, especially the young ones, can afford to do. I think it's going to take a really good production and a really good backup business team, to be able to support them, in for them, like to be able to deliver at the same time as soon as they show, then they will be able to put a collection for sale in stores. So I think that, yes, someone like Burberry, can afford to do this. I mean, they have their own stores, they have their own web stores. It's a multi-billion company, they can afford to do everything they want, basically, pretty much. But I think
if you look at where they sell, probably 90% plus is through their own channels. I would have thought. I'm only guessing. I don't know anything about it, but I would imagine it's a very, very high proportion. So they can control it. They do what they like.
But I also think as well that, like, for young designers, I would love it if young designers grasped the nettle and actually made the way they sell their clothes, produce their clothes, present their clothes as part of their own USP. And saw it as a real chance to be like, right, well, I'm going to make my own mark. Kind of in the same way that Gosha did, although he has kind of does now show in Paris, but at the beginning with Gosha, it was like he didn't show, or like there was barely any clothes, or and I also think, like, it's so weird to talk about London fashion and not talk about Palace, your neighbours, who were one of the biggest young fashion brands at the moment, who have nothing to do with the system and wouldn't want to be either. And so it is possible to be a brand doing fashion in London that doesn't rely on feel conformist.
That is tough, because you have to have some way of selling your stuff. And most of the young guys rely on a small number of very forward-looking stores. Yeah,
but that's because they structure their business in the model, which is that I want to be an old-fashioned fashion brand which works in this way, rather than someone like Palace, which is like,
I agree with you, because Palace, Palace is following, the most successful model that exists right now, which is Supreme model. You know, like, I mean, everyone praises and says that this has been and is the most successful business model that exists right now, you know, which is the Supreme model. You know, the way that they kept everything very small, you know, like it's very, very directional. You know, they have very specific stores, you know, worldwide. And they do the drops every Thursday.
But not
you know,
just
the
that,
way
they,
that
and not
do
just
it.
that, but they don't release imagery before,
Yeah,
just before.
never,
So no one sees anything.
Yeah, no one sees a collection
so it's just
until it drops.
complete mania.
Yeah, so I think that pretty much is what Supreme does. You know, like it's really, really amazing. And yes, of course, you know, Palace is following that model, which is great. But I'm just thinking about that. You know, Supreme, Palace also. You know, in lesser extent, you know, they are brands that they have made, how can I say it very politely, they have made enough money to be able, you know, like to do
good
for them.
changes,
Good for them,
you know,
good
and
for
amazing
them.
for them.
Good for them, but it is still fashion.
And then no, 100%.
Yeah.
But then I'm start thinking about, you know, some of our brands, you know, that they struggling quite a lot, you know, as things are right now, because the market is not promising, you know, as well, which is something, you know, that there is, you know, a kind of like instability right now in what is happening to retail.
They could learn some lessons from it. Like, I wish there was. It is, and I mean by grasping the nettle, being like, right, what are we doing, and stop being so sort of passive in the relationship with customers. I was talking with Adrian from Dover Street, and he was saying about how for Rei Kawakubo, it's always been about the customer. It's not design in a box that's blind. She's always been about the relationship with the customer. And I think that there should be so much more thought about the relationship with the customer, even if it stays to the current system. I suppose what you were saying about Grace's clothes being wearable, but I think all that's happening now is about a readjustment about the relationship.
Well, I mean, go.
I was just going to say, I think that's why, I think the reason everyone's so up in arms about it and stressing about it is it's what you said, it's about how it affects the industry, it's not how it affects the customer. No one is thinking about all these changes in terms of like what is the best for designers, what is best for letting people actually buy stuff that they, you know, might not get access to otherwise, you know, all of this stuff. And I think the problem is, I just don't think, and I know this sounds a bit like sweeping, but I just don't think Fashion Week makes sense as a thing anymore, which I know is kind of sad in some ways, because it's obviously wonderful going to shows and
I don't know.
What do you think? Again, it boils back to what you think the purpose of that show is. You know, again, I think I personally had a very sort of distinct sort of epiphany about 2 years ago when I decided I was going to open a shop. And all of a sudden, from thinking about a show as an opportunity to create an image for ourselves, I thought about it as an opportunity to test out some new products, to put them in front of the people who are going to buy them. That's both the real customer and the wholesale customer. But also, you know, I think that having a shop, all of a sudden you think about, what you think about clothes is clothes need to find a customer. They need to find a person who wants to wear them and buy them, because that's how you pay the rent. And fashion is no different to any other industry. There has to be somebody who loves your thing and loves it more than all the other things that he could buy that would do the same job, and has a means of going and buying them.
I just don't think the show engages with that person.
But the thing is, I think the fashion is a very slow-moving ship.
Yeah.
So the shows aren't going to collapse that quickly. I also think at the moment there isn't yet any other model for the buyers to see all the stuff at the same time.
I don't think the buyers even engage with the shows that much.
No,
That's what's
I
weird.
think they
really
do.
I think they engage with being at the shows, but they're always going to showrooms.
The showrooms are extremely important. I mean, I think that the shows are very, very important, because you get the whole vibe.
I spoke to some buyers this season from really big stores who literally had they were in Paris and they'd maybe gone to 2 shows. They'd been in showrooms, they'd been talking with designers, they'd been at the going to kind of showroom presentations.
No, but then you do talk to buyers, and they do a buy before the show, then they see this show and they're like, well, none of this was in the show, I've got to go back. I still think it has.
But clothes ultimately, fundamentally, are there to be worn. And if you see them in a showroom, and again, especially most men's showrooms, you don't have fit models who are trying the clothes on, so you can't see it on a person actually moving unless you go to the show and you watch it. And that's where the clothes, good clothes, I think, look best on human beings. And I think that is where, the buyer sees how it, they look and they watch. I mean, the point is the models are there. You can imagine yourself in those clothes, and you think, look, but then you see it hanging on a rail. It doesn't make any sense, but you see it. You see some of those clothes in action, and you think they look That's what sells the idea to you.
Also, many customers, are shopping based on looks that they see on the catwalks. So basically they're going to tell you, oh, I want like a full look. You have, as a buyer, you have like to be also able to identify the key pieces of the collection. Not just on the showroom, which is of course where you do your whole work, but when you see the catwalk, then this is the first feeling that you get from the collection. This is what makes you excited. You start start planning it at that point, and then you see also the rest of the reactions, which these reactions are very, very important to you, because these reactions are going to be the ones that they're going to go through press, and then from press through social media they're going to reach to the customers in a very early stage. So it's kind of like start building a momentum for you to know which are the pieces
I agree with
that
the
you're going to
concept
buy.
of momentum. I just think there's better ways perhaps for brands to achieve it. I think part of the reason a lot of young designers do struggle so much financially is because and it goes back to what you were saying, they're not grabbing the nettle, they're kind of subscribing to the system and they're entering it where they have to pay for a show each season, and they have to struggle to try and produce a pre-collection because like retailers are asking for it. And I feel like a lot of brands, I speak to a lot of young designers who they say they get to a point where they've done all these shows. It means their press is like here, they get so much press, there's people writing about it, but their buy is still like there. So actually the show is almost doing them a disservice because they're getting all this hype and they can't,
But it's the same for everyone. I mean, like the thing is, like I went surfing for the first time last week, and you spend so much time like wobbling on the board like this. I had no idea, and like it is that thing of like you just got to work out that balance.
Yeah.
Should we talk about some more shows?
Yeah.
We talk about one show in half an hour. I think like
I feel like we should stay
unless
on.
we should like change the name of it to like us chatting on about stuff.
Let's stay on Man because I'd like to talk about Charles Jeffrey because
let's say Rory did a great show. Rory was his third collection. He did a great show in the middle. It was really, really strong, and it was a great show. And then
Loverboy.
This thing happened. Basically, it went dark, and these things came out. Not the models. I mean, the things. But I'm sure they wouldn't mind me call that either. Like basically, Gary made these massive cardboard monstrosities that they took quite a while to come out, and they really looked like they were going to fall.
Right.
And I think one did actually fall in a rehearsal, and I think it was that sense of event and that sense of like someone making the effort beyond which they have to do, and really creating a world. And the great this was also Charles's first ever show. He did a presentation last season, and the extraordinary thing here was the make of the clothes, which was just exceptional.
And I think one of the things that's interesting is I felt, it was interesting what you said about Grace, how that, the first two looks kind of defined the season. That sweater in here that we're going to see...
That one there, or...?
No, the one that's got the red tape in it. I felt like it kind of came to...
I think it was
it's either down or... No, it's up.
Up.
Sorry, Brett. Where is it? Is it there? I think we just went past it.
Are you taking the
it's that one. There it is.
There it is.
It's just piece.
Yeah, and I felt like that sweater kind of also was one of the items that really defined the season.
Yeah, totally was. Yeah, and the thing is that piece is so basically. So it's knitted. Is it cable knit? I think, but those panels in between it are actually teeny slivers of electrical tape that they've made like a mosaic, a completely individual mosaic, which they then heat bonded. I think. I'm going to say lots of words that I'm not sure they're true, but then inserted into the thing. It's extraordinary.
I think that this is I don't know if we can use that word, trademark or something like that, but I think this is something very characteristic of his. He did that. That was the thing that basically he really became known for from his graduate show in St. Martin's. Everyone wanted actually to have these jumpers, in the stores.
He spent a lot of time thinking about it though. I went to the Paris showrooms and I spoke to him, and he was saying the problem with it before is you literally couldn't do it. You couldn't wash it, you couldn't really wear it. There was, and he spent a lot of time with these. It is still electrical tape, but in the way it's coated, in the way it's backed and stuff. So it's something that is practical. It's not like something that would just look cool in a magazine. Which is, I still think it's a tricky thing in terms of it's a special piece. It's not like a t-shirt, but I think it's great that he's also thinking about people buying and wearing his clothes because they look amazing on bodies. That's what's so great, and I think you saw that with his casting, which was really nice.
I mean, this is kind of like his crew, he's got a very famous club night which is called Loverboy, and I think all this that he recreates together, it's kind of like what Charles Jeffrey is about. He loves the club scene, most of these boys, it was like, I think, street casting, and they're like friends of his, people that, they go and they hang out together and they do the Loverboy, and the clothes looked really, really good. I mean, it was a very, very fun moment, but in a very smart way done, it wasn't like just fun.
I also love that it feels new, because I think, there were a few naysayers after this show who was like, oh, I saw it the first time, Trojan, Lee Bowery, what have you. But what I like about this is it's like there's a generation for whom this feels really new, and this is their reality, and they do dress like that, and they do throw on stuff to go to a club and paint their face and what have you. And maybe they are aware of those references, or maybe they're not, or maybe they just find something really new in that. But I think that's what's nice as well, as it feels like it's about the life he actually leads, which is really nice. It's not like an imagined fashion lifestyle, which I think is really lovely.
I mean, the great thing as well is that I don't think he actually worked with a tailor on this collection, but in his first presentation he worked with someone on Stavros, and he actually really cares about the make of clothes, and he really cares about what they do for the body, and I think he's going to work again with someone else. I don't know who it was on Stavros, but like,
it was Stavros,
But there was such a kind of ebullient sense of confidence. And it's interesting the thing you say as well about the past, and they do a lot of films with Shana Osbourne, don't they? And the great thing about the films is that it just shows that young people look young no matter what decade it is. So you can't blame them for looking the same as young people before. Young people look young, and they look a bit awkward and a bit gawky and a bit off, and
it's that thrown together thing that you can't. It just doesn't work, and I hate being like, oh, it doesn't look good unless you're young, but it's that awkwardness is just something that is so innate to youth, and it's so interesting to see it.
I wasn't at the show. I obviously saw the pictures as they came out, and I don't know, it just felt really exciting to watch. I felt kind of jealous of the people that were there, and I slightly felt jealous of them having that life where they're all going and doing that stuff, which is, I think, how it should make you feel.
But and it's that good feeling.
And there was also a sense of danger, because either they were acting wasted or whatever. There was one who almost like that. I mean, like really, like it was amazing. It's what a fashion show should be. Like, not all fashion shows, obviously, but like to have it there.
Yeah.
I mean, I really do think we should congratulate Lulu Kennedy and
absolutely.
Thomas putting it on, because like it really was like an exceptional show.
Also, I'm guessing that he did like his own styling, right? Because he's got an amazing eye actually of putting things together.
But he's great at getting dressed. That's the thing, right? And I love that. Like, it's the good side of aspiration. Like, you look at it and it's exactly what we were saying. Like, you want to be like those people, and you're intrigued by their life, and you want to go to that club. But there's none of the lofty aspiration where you're like, oh, I wish I could look like that, but I never will. You look at it and you're like, oh, actually, this is like really exciting, and you feel like it's that thing is what sells people clothes, is wanting to be part of a tribe or a club. But I think this does it in a really like positive way, rather than that kind of like, if you buy this you'll be happy. Like it's not like that at all.
I think there actually is a Loverboy this Friday or Saturday.
See you there.
But the thing is I love about it is I've never been. I love the fact I'm so old that I don't even know who these kids are. I love it.
I want to talk about Grindr, because this was like the season of Grindr. JW Anderson streamed his show on Grindr, but also there was a really brilliant collection, the Pizza collection, which was kind of made lots of references to, it always makes references to kind of gay culture, but specifically things like Grindr and Cruise, which was one of the sweatshirts, but also the HH t-shirts that he did, which is high and horny. Tell us what that means.
Basically, it appears on Grindr, and it basically means that the people are off their heads and they want you to join them in being off their heads.
I see. But I thought it was interesting. One of the things that I found most interesting with this is like when designers in the past, I think, have made similar kind of sensual references. People often talk about like subculture or fetish or what have you. But I think what I found interesting is Grindr, it's like massive, it's a huge audience, and actually, there were subversive elements to this collection, but actually by acknowledging that audience, that is a really active, digital savvy group of men who,
It's a platform.
It's a huge platform. It's not like some weird niche world that he's acknowledging, like a fetish club.
I don't necessarily agree with, the use, using that platform for, fashion or basically, promoting its promotion.
But I think why would you use Facebook?
We're talking about J.W. Anderson used it. Peter didn't actually use it.
No. I'm talking just about like using like the Grindr for that reason. But
why not though? Because if it was like Twitter or Facebook,
because I think that Yes, I guess I'm getting it. Like
you're like, I
it's
just
a new-
don't want my feet.
No. Like I mean, it's like platform. Like I mean, like to show something like even more. But I think there are like already so many platforms. That you can use for that reason.
I mean, it was the cleverest. It was the most genius thing because the thing is we're talking about it.
Yeah.
And also
Of course,
it got Jonathan's show talked about a week before the show. There was a piece in the New York Times about it, and then it got Grindr being talked about. So, and the cleverest thing actually I want to talk about Peter as well, but the cleverest thing that Jonathan did was in the contract, they agreed that there was no mention of Grindr anywhere in the venue. So there was no logos, there was no you wouldn't have known in the show. So it was all the pre-tour. And actually there was no, if you'd have looked at this show, you would have never said, the thing's Grindr. So it was all a load of like, and Jonathan said, like he says, he's a businessman. Like it was all about getting attention on the show.
The show was, by the way, one of my top favorite.
Did you really like it?
Yes, I did. I think it was like one of the strongest shows that I've seen this season. From London, and I think I love that side of Jonathan. Yeah,
it felt more like I liked it because it felt more. I wasn't mad on the last one. I thought it was quite like fey, and it felt almost like too intellectual, and I think sometimes he gets lost in his own ideas, and this season it felt a little bit more naughty, and I think it's nice when he does stuff that is a little bit more kind of naughty and fetishy, and it reminded me of some of his older stuff, and I really liked it for that reason. I think it's interesting to see that fur thing is so when you see young designers kind of obviously being really like given a lot of support and help to use fur, which is kind of an interesting one. But what was everyone else's take?
It's interesting because it's the first time I've looked at it since the show. I mean, I thought that the snails were clever because they can then, I presume in the show, they were on the front of a sweat.
And also bomber jackets and stuff, which I think they're going to be very, very popular. Items. Yeah,
it's that Prada thing.
No, it's not, because Prada wouldn't
just put it on a sweater.
Yeah, he's very clever at, in a show, doing an imagery and then creating a commercial collection which sells it. I did find a lot that was very similar to Prada, but he also talks about referencing other people, so that's not a problem for him. I don't understand why you would want to do that though. I mean more in these kind of pajama-y things, and also at the top there was the coat with the studded collar, which felt very Prada-y to me.
There was some beautiful knitwear actually in this collection, not this one particularly, but I mean, like, there are some knitwear that they have like beautiful cuts on the sleeves and stuff, that they had very, very beautiful like knits, and he did like some like knitwear trousers as well. And of course, what Charlie said, with the snails, they looked like all these pieces like very, very beautifully. But I really liked the knitwear actually. Like there were like some really beautiful. I think it must be like, you see like they're tied on the right, the cuffs, but actually when you open them, they are like really big. So
I thought the big cardigans were great. I mean, I think the thing about Jonathan is how extraordinary his success has been, and how he's steered and steered in a way above and beyond. And
I remember I interviewed him once, and I asked him. It was about 2 years ago.
I hate that, by the way. But yeah, sorry. And
I really like.
How would you want to have a crop? I mean, but anyway, whatever.
I liked in your FT review when you reviewed Burberry and you called the furs gross.
Well, we can talk about it if you want. We'll go to it if you want. But again, that later,
I was going to say, I interviewed him like 2 years ago, and I love interviewing him. He's such a good person to interview because he just like gives good interview. And I asked him who he thought his peers were, and he was like, because I feel like, all the other young London designers, you speak to them and they're like, Christopher Kane's friends with Roxander and Erdem, they're like a little gang. And he was like, he didn't talk about his London people, and I said, you never engage with that, why not? And he said, you have to be bigger than your city, like, if you just engage with that, it's far too domestic and it holds you back. And I kind of admire that ambition in him, that he has always seen himself as so much more than London. And I think in a way...
Is more the right word?
He's always seen himself as so much more than London, I think, and that's interesting.
No, but it's more the word he would use to compare himself to London.
I think not more in terms of in a lofty way, just in an ambition. I think he said in that same interview, he was like, like a lot of the amazing designers are, over 70, over 80. Who is going to replace them? And I think that's why he doesn't want to be like an emerging brand in London. He wants to be a huge, great creative director. And you like that or not, I kind of admire in him that he knows what he wants to be, and there's none of that like you know, he's right. Who is going to take over from? Yeah, his name's getting bandied about for Dior. Like a lot of other London designers who are very successful, their names aren't. And I think why? And I think it's because he's always strives to go for that.
And also the thing we talked about at the beginning was that like there are different designers who've got different ambition.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's like he's great, the others have failed because of it. But I think it's interesting when you see someone. It's kind of actually the same point I was trying to make about Grace, who knows what they want and they stake their claim for it. He obviously wants a very different life to I think what Grace would want, and probably has very different priorities and is willing to do things and have to, you know, travel all the time and do 2 creative jobs and, you know, be at Loverboy, at JW. So do all these things. He's willing to do those to get to where he wants. Grace is willing to do certain things or not willing to do certain things. And I think it's good in a way to have that diversity within London.
Of course, he's one of the most successful examples of, you know, London designers. So
but it depends what you mean by success, I guess.
I mean, success, I mean, you know, I'm thinking about it, you know, as a brand that, you know, managed to, and him as well for himself, but also as a brand, his own brand is doing extremely well. He's a creative director to another brand that is doing extremely well, Lover, and, you know, his brand is owned by one of the biggest powerhouses.
A snippet of it.
Yeah. You know, worldwide. So I think that, and he's quite young as well. You know, like I mean, he's not that old. So I think that he's one of the most successful examples, you know, from London designers. You know, and this is a great example as well for other younger designers that everything is possible. Depending on what you want from from your career.
Who else should we talk about? There's a lot of people we haven't discussed, like loads. Do you want to quickly talk about Burberry?
Let's talk about Burberry. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a nice show. I thought, and the thing was that it was the first time that they'd integrated all the lines in. So like there was great outerwear. It was that really weird thing that happened when London was super warm. So it did feel like a bit, everyone was about to faint in there, but we're in these super heavy coats. But like it's a much more real idea of Burberry than what had previously been shown when it was called Burberry Prawsome. And I actually liked it at its best when it's at the most humble. And also he used lots of old Burberry shapes and styles. So I bet that duffel that we just saw a minute ago was an old Burberry style that you could have got from the old Burberry second-hand, whatever they call it, the factory store, you know, and I mean that as a compliment, like the old one in Hackney, but like they used to always go and get an old Burberry coat there, and then sometimes there was just moments like, oh my god, why have you done that? That fur wasn't. I mean, I don't like fur, so that's gross to me, but I think it's a bit further up, maybe. Is it?
There's the one that's. Do you mean the very?
Yeah, maybe it's just. I don't know, but there was just a really disgusting fur that was like, why have you done that? I think it was maybe lower down. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's spotless. But no, it was. I think it was a clever show to bridge to this new world where it acknowledges.
Well, it felt to me a bit like the, you know, what Heddy's been doing.
Yeah.
Whatever you call that brand.
Saint Laurent.
Is that?
That's what you call it. Yeah.
At Saint Laurent. You know, it's a load of quite nice clothes. It's a load of quite nice or nice clothes. I mean, I don't like the Saint Laurent stuff. It's not my thing at all. This has that same sort of feeling of here's just some really nice clothes, and you know, and if you think that they obviously knew at this point that 6 months down the line they're just going to be having these things available, it seems like a perfectly nice. Here's some clothes. You know, they're nice clothes. You can buy them, whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think it's more than that?
Yeah. I mean, but I also think Saint Laurent's more than that. So like that's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other
debate. But no. But I also think it's an honesty about a brand as well. I'd much rather see from a brand which is based on people buying stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm not. That's not meant to the criticism at all. It's you know, if you're talking about what is the point of a show, it's to show real people, real clothes that they can then buy. Then that's exactly what they're delivering.
I suppose the point of it comes to me that I think the difference with Saint Laurent is I think that there'd be a bit more on it, like that bomber in the middle should be a little bit more cut to make it a little bit more, you know, have a bit more But I think I suppose where this show kind of fell for me was when it then tried to be jazzy razzy catwalk show, which was the furs or the sequiny tracksuits and stuff. But
I mean, what surprised me actually, this is what surprised me quite a lot about the show is
that gets so disgusting.
No. I was just saying that, you know, what surprised me looking at the show again, you know, I'm thinking about that. Also, is like the styling is very, different, very specific, which actually, it makes me think, even as a customer, that actually it recommends you ways of, how you can wear something very traditional and very, that because they're known for the outerwear mainly. So they offer you a way of looking at things and how you can put them together with different kind of clothes.
But that's thinking, I guess, going back to what they're saying about how they knew what their plans were at the time. That's, I bet, when you click on it to buy it, it'll suggest to you, the trousers and the top
But also the thing is that like we talk, because I am like really old, like you get to the point where you realise
really
that but the thing is when we go to the shows, things aren't a surprise. Like it's very rare that things are surprises. It's really clear that that's last winter that worked. Okay, that's more of it. So the zip ups, it's clear it's been working for us. Actually, it's working. So like it's clear. Like,
I think if you've been looking at fashion for
decades,
30 years. There is nothing that's new, but there's just good ways of doing things that you've seen before. And then there are other people who are just doing things that you've seen before in exactly the same way that you've seen before, which makes them less interesting.
I don't think there's nothing that's new. This is why I love Craig Green, because I find I just want to segue.
That was a really good
segue. Because what I like about him is he's so good at he's not like obsessed with the new in the sense of I love that he carries ideas on from season to season. But then I feel like, when he started, which again, going back to Grace, is, really not that long ago, he did do something that was genuinely new. I know people make those kind of lazy comparisons with Yoji and stuff because of the trousers or what have you, but the jackets that he's done, I don't think people had something like that they could have gone and bought elsewhere. And I think that's what's so interesting with him and why he's so successful. It's just like, who else has done that? Who else has made something completely new that feels very... I know there's like...
But the good thing is that it comes from the...
But I think there's a difference between references and inspirations and wholesale reproduction. Yeah. And I think that's why I really love Craig. Although, they're not really... For me, I do own some, which is I just bought them because I really wanted to.
I actually think that hooded field jacket you could wear that.
You can. I mean, they are quite. Once you de-strap them,
I find it super
very
easy to wear.
Actually, they're very. If you took the straps off, they're not a million miles away from sort of.
The interesting thing is that they are. It's clear that he wants the straps on them. There's not a version with the straps off. You buy it with the straps.
But I find the straps one of the cleverest things because I actually think the straps, ironically, because people think of them as something that makes it aesthetically kind of complex, that's what makes it the easiest to wear because you can make it fit your body shape. Because I have loads of the outerwear. And you just pull the straps, and they're not just there for decoration. You can use a lot, like some of them are, but most of them you can use it. So that's why people are always like, why do girls look so great in Craig Green? And it's because it impeccably fits your body because you pull it to adjust you. It's amazing. I love this collection as well. I thought it was really great because I thought it showed a real confidence in terms of like what he is about and refusing to kind of. I think there was a couple. I felt like some people were quite critical last season when they said he hadn't moved on enough, and I really liked this. I thought there was like a softness to it, and it didn't feel like it was. He never feels. I know he always is nervous because he's such a lovely guy, but like I think every collection feels so composed.
I think these pieces were beautiful. I mean, sorry, I'm keep looking like the collection because I personally think that he's one of the greatest emerging designers that we have, and his job is excellent. And if you see like all the work, I mean, I remember these blankets, looking them in the showroom, and they're all like embroidered. They're so beautiful. Like this material that he has used as well. I think he's great, and he doesn't need to move to something else because he's doing something that is very exciting, very new. He's doing a name of himself right now. It's selling extremely well, so he did the best thing that he could with following
but also
season.
It's that thing as well of like there's launch trajectory, and then there's like settling down to the speed that you then cruise at, like, and that's the thing that Craig's done so well is the season that he got criticised for came after the season everyone cried and it was the most extraordinary show, but he had to then move to a position where he could keep going at a sustainable level rather than you can't keep doing that. And actually also what he needed to do for himself as well was his kind of rookie period in Man was all about like the remember the paint that was then pressed, or there was the tie-dye, and he obviously realised that there wasn't another way to use colour or print or something, in that he had to find a way to have an evolving language that lasted longer than just a novelty of colour or pattern. And I think that was what that shift was about. And then this was the first. The interesting thing for me about this was I think it was the first time we worked with a stylist.
No, he usually works with Julian Gagnon every other season.
That's true.
And this season
it was a
Robbie,
different stylist.
Different stylist,
It was Robbie. And I think a different stylist kind of moved it in a kind of more like what's the word? Understandable direction. Maybe. I think it was much more sort of aimed at a wider fashion audience. If that makes.
I think criticism. I think criticism for consistency is a really awful thing.
Yeah, it really bothers me.
Because we as people who love fashion and spend our time thinking about it and are immersed in it, we see something and we see it for a number of seasons and we love it and then we want it to progress. But it takes time to sink into most people's consciousness. This is going to take years for he needs to make a living out of doing this, and by chucking all this brilliant stuff away and finding something new every season, he's not going to bring people with him. And this is this has a chance to be really super successful. But criticising him for not carrying on the best bits of what he does just seems really perverse to me.
Actually, to me, I never think about Yoji in terms of the clothes, what it looks like, but I think in terms of like his status and his stature and where he hopefully will be is in a position where he's super respected and allowed to be creative and not compromise. There is an absolute tragedy with this collection, which is that not one single buyer bought the blankets, so they are not producing them. And I am gutted about this. I want those blankets so badly. But
can't you buy them? Can't you buy them?
Exactly.
We debate. You know what? Like we debated it so much. So we debated it, and it is. Yeah.
Well, why doesn't he just offer them to be made bespoke? I mean, put a price on them, you'd pay it, he'd make some money, probably pay for his next show.
I'd like there to be London Blanket.
I'm going to keep pushing us through because we haven't talked about Astrid Anderson, we haven't talked about Lou Dalton, we haven't talked about Sibling, we haven't talked about Christopher Shannon, James Long, we haven't talked about McQueen. We didn't really talk about Peter, but we kind of touched on it. Nazir is interesting given some of the discussions we were already having in terms of like taking ownership and control of how you're going to operate. Because obviously he's talked about, not selling wholesale, doing things through his own website and what have you. And I think he is obviously going to have some relationships with retailers who've supported him for a long time. But and I really liked this show. I thought it was really lovely.
I can tell you something about Nazir because I had a really long meeting with him last weekend. So basically, because we're talking quite a lot. I haven't seen him actually, since his show, because obviously he didn't wholesale this collection this time, and he actually has actively thought about actually going down the road of like releasing everything at the same time with the show. So he was explaining all his model, in the way that he thought about it. But he said, you know what, I don't want like to go like public with this. I don't want like to make like any special announcement with that. I just want like to have it happening, and like I just want to make it happen. No. But he already is going to do it. I mean he's doing it in the next months. Yeah. So
and to learn more, Charlie will be interviewing Nazir. Charlie's going to be interviewing Nazir as part of my exhibition on the 30th of March.
He's going to have a lot of things to say. I'm sure.
Anyone else to plug?
Book out.
I actually do.
No, but I love this collection. I mean, the thing about Nazir is that also there's humour involved, and we had the debut performance of Mrs. Buckethead. Mr. Buckethead has appeared before, but there was Mrs. Buckethead, who was one of my favourite looks the entire season. It's a model with a bucket on it.
Yeah.
But the thing also that Nazir has really struggled with himself is to understand his, and I mean struggled as in personally rather than in terms of any sort of salesman thing, but like how to engage with or move. There's Mrs. Buckethead. Move on from the idea of just being logo, and does he want to be a logo brand? Does he want to do something different from logo brand? And I thought this show was a nice, happy or move to a new place. And the thing that Nazir does so well is that it's such about fabric development, fabric treatment, and the way fabrics are put together.
Do you not feel like a lot of critics just don't understand it? I feel like this real frustration at the moment, and you must find this in terms of what you buy, is I just feel like there's so much fashion, like we have so much stuff now that is streetwear or sportswear, and I kind of hate those words. And I just feel like there's like huge amounts of the fashion press that don't even know how to talk about it or refer to it or understand the references.
There was a really great piece in The Guardian about streetwear being a racist term, which you can find on The Guardian.
Yeah, because Nazir always says that. He's like, it's offensive to call it streetwear. Like, he hates it.
Yeah. But also, like, take one pair of trousers of Nazir, and start analysing, see how many panels they go into it, how much work is going into it. No one else is doing that.
Like, I mean, people can't see it because it's on that shape.
I'm like, what are you talking about when you haven't actually seen the actual garment and see like how much work and detailed work is going onto it. And
Dariush this morning was saying, he was like, I think the split between men's and women's is over. He was like, I think the next split is going to be between high fashion sportswear or streetwear, which I don't know if I agree with, but I was thinking it doesn't work in the current system.
No, but the thing is that like the great thing is Nazir's taking it into his own hands if that's true about him doing that. So he's basically saying, I don't need your approval, I don't need you to put a word on it. I'll just sell it on my own website without the markups and make them in. That's like, which is good for him.
And he said that, you know, actually, it's kind of like, it's extremely brave what he does, because, you know, in terms of like stockies, in terms of like how much he's selling actually, he's got quite a lot of stores worldwide, and you know, he has like a successful business, but at the same time, you know, what is super important to him is that his customers, his real customers, the people that he wants them to see wearing his clothes, you know, he wants them to be able to afford these clothes. So, and now obviously, you know, because he also doesn't want like to compromise in ways of, in terms of, you know, the production and, you know, the way that he wants the things to look like, you know, he wants like to change the whole model of wholesaling his collection. So he's going to work still with stores, but he's going to make his own selection about which stores he wants to work with. And, you know, then through his own web store as well.
It's interesting. I'm excited to see it develop. Who haven't we talked about?
Should we talk about Liam?
Let's talk about Liam.
Liam Hodges made his debut outside of Man.
Yes.
Which was very exciting indeed. And Liam's a lovely guy.
I love Liam.
He's so amazing.
We all love Liam.
He's so amazing. And like and the great thing with Liam is he's doing that thing which we said of so many people, like he's building his own world, his own narrative, and dialogue.
He did like the zine with Ditto Press and all of that stuff, you know.
Yeah. He's got such ambition for what he wants to do with shows. Like he would love to do a show that was just like a bare room with some stuff in it. Like he really, you know, he's got ambition.
My concern, sorry, I was going to say my concern only with it is that thing of, because, you know, obviously I think that a lot of the references he draws on, they're very kind of like, you know, heterosexual boy references, things that guys are into. And my only concern ever for him is, would the lad that he is kind of interested in talking to be the kind of guy who would go and buy Palace or Supreme and wouldn't make the extra price jump to buy this? That's my only... I don't know. I'm not saying that as a criticism.
No. I just think that this is, you know, where his references are coming from. But I think, you know, that his type of customer is not necessarily that type of customer. You know, I mean, obviously we're selling the brand in store, and, you know, I know that his type of customer is a completely different one.
Is it quite diverse, would you say?
Yeah, I would say that it's quite diverse. You know, and I think it talks a lot to the Asian market too. You know, like, which, you know, it's very, very, it's as a brand, it's very extremely appealing to. And I think that, you know, Liam is a great example. You know, I mean, I was saying that to panel that we did for Liam, but for me, you know, what I'm seeing through, you know, he's a very, very young designer, but he's got a very strong business direction, you know, and it's extremely surprising to see that in such an early stage. He knows exactly where he wants to go with his brand. He knows all the right things that he needs to do around him, you know, to make this brand successful. And also the most amazing thing is that he knows how to move forward with this, because, you know, doing that, you know, you can stay there and you don't know how sometimes you go to the next season. But I think the transitional period for him is doing great, and, you know, he went to the new show very, very strong. I love the show, and I think, you know, he's going to do extremely
And it's smart that he's already doing the things that the big brands are doing, like things like, you know, everyone talks about creating content, but it's kind of, you know, what Grace does as well. It's really well, is you do feel like when you see this clothes, you're kind of invited into their world and you're understanding that. And that's, I think, really important if you're a young brand.
Yeah, it is very important.
We didn't talk about Sibling. We also didn't talk about Astrid. We didn't talk about Lou Dalton. I'm conscious of time.
I just want to say that I really loved Sibling. I want like the opinion of the rest,
Sibling,
because I thought that was one of the best
shows that
I have ever
seen.
done.
I
you
thought
know,
it was
like,
maybe their best
I mean,
show.
I think it was one of the best shows, and I think that it's really congratulations to them. Honestly, I really love the show. You know,
I agree. I think it was absolutely knockout.
Yeah.
Look at you! I actually said that in my reviews. I already made that joke.
No, but it genuinely, it was perfect. It was. I mean, it's so technically brilliant, and like there's so much amazing craft in it, and it looks so sort of, you know, like it's like opal fruit. You just want to kind of, you know, it's almost edible. It's so cool looking, and, you know, it just oozes just loveliness. I think it's
a shame we haven't got the backs
the
as
backs
well,
are
because
amazing.
some of the backs were extraordinary. I don't know which piece it was but it was that real understanding of how to put colour together, how to put yarn together, the tension of yarn, the way to make knitwear light.
Because some of that stuff, do you not think it's got overshadowed in the past because their shows are so fun and so themed? and often I feel like the craft aspect sometimes, like, it's not like it.
I think people overlook how incredibly difficult it is to make knitwear look that brilliant.
Yeah,
you know, Sid is undoubtedly probably the greatest knitwear man in the world. Nobody else does anything like he does with knitwear. He's so brilliant. There's so many great, and he's always moving it forward and learning how to do. I mean, he's a real kind of alchemist, and you know, and what I really love is it feels like finally, because I think people talk about the success of designers, and you know, sometimes people look more successful than they are, and I think there's been an assumption that they've been, but it feels like finally they're they're selling a lot of stuff. I don't know, because I haven't spoken about, but it feels like they've finally found a sort of recipe for commercial success without compromising anything at all.
No,
it's just they've just been really consistently doing an amazing thing, and all of a sudden everybody's kind of, oh, this is great, and I want to buy it. And you know, I'm so happy for them.
And I love their references. I know how they're quite literal sometimes, but I love that this, you know, I love the different, like, you know, tribes that they look at. I love the way they look at masculinity. I love the way they look at, like, you know, this was like Basquiat and all that kind of stuff. I love that. I think it's kind of quite joyful the way that they do that.
But it's always been a celebration of fashion in the most
exactly.
pure and gleeful.
You know, it's like make the model smile. You know, it's like it's different.
So I'm conscious of time. If we had to kind of, I know it's always bad to kind of summarise a city or what have you. We also haven't talked about eTorts, which was very nice shows.
But it's very different. Again, I think
there's a place for everyone.
But the interesting thing about your show as well is that, like, it was a real. We have talked about mostly young designers, but the thing is that the season was mostly dominated by that idea, because most of the kind of older brands actually were off catwalk or weren't, and yours is a really nice bridge between, because it actually was what people wear, which is like nice clothes, isn't it?
Hopefully it was nice clothes.
No,
but they're the sort of clothes, you know, you hopefully you put them on and you think, oh, this feels nice, and I look nice in this. Which is sometimes it doesn't translate to wow necessarily on the catwalk, but you know, I love wearing these trousers, and what we find is that people come into our store and buy stuff and are sort of surprised that it makes them feel good. But it is funny, because almost all the people that we were bridging to before have all sodded off. So we're now like the boring end, whereas we used to be somewhere in the middle.
I know, exactly. But that was the interesting thing, is that and if you're asking about London as a thing, it really was the kind of, when LCM started, it was this kind of balance between sartorial and young, and it really feels like the young is kind of being like, well, actually we're the real presence.
We're the real presence.
The most of the sartorial.
Well, we were criticised for not being ugly enough in one review.
Really?
You know, so I see where you're coming from with these clothes, but you know, why didn't you just leave them in the really ugly form that they were originally in? And well, because that's really bloody easy. We're trying to sell clothes that people wear.
But so we think
our customer wears, you know, this is the thing. I think we've been very fortunate that we've got to a point where we do know our customer now, because we've got a shop. And this is the point with all of this, is we now know exactly who they are, and they're sort of like me, and they wear this sort of stuff, and that's all right, because I understand that.
Yeah, it was a rare appearance of a tie in London. Like, there were no ties.
I know. Can I ask? I really want to ask this, because it was actually Paris, so we're going off topic, but you wrote a thing in the FT where you said out of this many looks that were shown at Paris, this many had a tie. Did you count?
I counted, but it was only the shows that I'd seen. I hope it was clear in that. But like, all you have to do is sit on Vogue runway
How
for.
long did that take you?
That's like all you can see. They're very obvious. They're quick to count.
And you have to then also have to subtract the number of women's looks as well.
It's not. He has a strange sort of Rain Man sense of the tie. He watches the show
I
and
knew you would have
automatically
subtracted the women's and all of that. I was like, he must have spent a moment.
No, it's fine. No, but I mean, it is a real. I mean, the thing is, the big message in terms of clothing is the move away from formality towards a sweater, towards a bomber or whatever. Like it, and then the informality has always existed in young designer, and that's triumphing. I mean, that's
I only put them on because I thought they looked nicer with ties than without on the ones that we put them into. That's the only reason.
It is interesting thinking about dressing patterns, though, because we always talk about like the relevance of the young designers, and how does this filter down, and it is interesting. Just more and more, I love it when you leave LCM, and you often see these pieces kind of mocking Fashion Week, where you say, you leave the fashion stuff and then you see the real people. And I've noticed more and more, yes, there's the street style circus, but actually you leave a show, like a Liam show or a Sibling show or whatever, and you go get on the bus, and yes, it's much more fashion when it's on the runway, but you can see how people are dressing and how men are dressing, that these garments are really applicable to their lives, and it's really nice.
It's changed
but
so much what real people wear
Yeah.
on the catwalk. This is the kind of Daily Mail, what is this nonsense, who would wear this? Actually, lots of people wear this.
Like everyone's wearing bombers and sweaters and like, you know,
trackies and
and I think that's nice because, you know, you always think of London as the mad city, but actually, like, I know a lot's changing in Milan now, but I start to find sometimes it's when you're in Milan you see these like crazy suit sartorial things, and then you walk outside and you're like, no one dresses like that. Like, how is this relevant?
Pity was like
Pity, I love. It's like a social experiment. It's
no.
amazing.
I mean, it's an amazing picture somewhere, you know, like that they have taken, and you know, there are like about 30 people dressed with so many different variations of the same suit.
It's so sinister.
It's like exactly the same, you know, everything like from the hat to the umbrella that they're holding. Everything is exactly the same. It is like I was like, how many they are? How many
it's
are
really
there?
scary.
It's very difficult.
Imagine if they were all your friends. Like, how
they wouldn't be that.
So everything's fine.
It's fine. Yeah.
On that triumphant
bombshell.
note for London and the small diss of pity, should we give? I know there's people who we didn't talk about, but I think, you know, a lot of what we said does apply to, you know, when we talk more generally about the young designers. I think and the emerging labels, it was a really strong and interesting season.
Yeah.
So should we give them a round of applause to
course.
wrap things up?